Welcome back to the BetCanada channel. This is your host, Jeff Lloyd. Chicago Bears 0-2, one of the more anticipated teams this offseason to follow. New coach, certainly a lot of new moves, the progression of second year quarterback Caleb Williams. We have Locked On Bears host Lauren Cox here. Um, Lauren, where I probably want to start with this certainly is probably Ben Johnson, because I think one of the things that I maybe just had some pause and hesitation about the move, and you see the Lions, and it always seems the Lions are maybe a little bit of a different product when they are outside. So for Ben Johnson maybe to go this route, go to the Bears, I mean, certainly the appeal was Caleb Williams. But, through 2 weeks and obviously an offseason and a summer, where are things? Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and of course, the development for, something that the Bears hope will change their tides within the NFC North.
Yeah, I think the quarterback head coach relationship is good, but the on field product hasn't taken off maybe as quickly as everyone had hoped. And I think there's a willingness for some patients here to say, yeah, it's a very different system than what Caleb Williams has worked with in the past. And they really wanted to kind of tear down from a footwork and mechanics standpoint and rebuild him and reset sort of the quarterback timing and stuff. But from week 1 to week 2, I think we saw some significant progress. And I'm describing it right now like the plane hasn't quite gotten off the runway, but we're really close to reaching cruising altitude.
Um, And I would say for Williams, and I think the disappointing thing was certainly week 1, because I think that was one where you probably thought maybe you could get out of that with the W. Certainly traveling to Detroit and facing them, after they had a week 1 loss themselves probably, certainly didn't bode well, for the ultimate outcome that came. But now take us through here, the rest of the team here. There was a lot of newness coming into the team. They made a lot of investments and, maybe not everything's just panning out just yet.
Yeah, a lot of it doesn't feel like it's panning out just yet, and that's the real concern. There's been a lot of heat on general manager Ryan Poles after the first 2 games, feeling like the slow start is not solely his fault, but maybe more his fault than the coaching staff. I think there's a willingness to say that, hey, it's going to take a little time for Ben Johnson's offense to get rolling here, and that but that they haven't really given Dennis Allen enough talent for that defense to be where it needs to be with all the injuries they've had at cornerback. Now Jalen Johnson's out for the year. Kyler Gordon's been sidelined for the first few weeks of this season, and they're really on a lot of backups on the back end there, and they haven't done a lot to really address that with any kind of proven depth there. And then like the additions they made on the defensive line, signing Grady Jarrett from the Falcons, and they brought in Dio Dengbo as a young guy from the Colts. Like it's been a little bit of a slow start for the defensive line as well, in a group that they invested a lot in the Montez Sweat trade, and none of them have been as productive as the Bears have needed them to be. So they're kind of sitting around waiting for like, hey, are these moves going to pan out at any point here, or is this a big group of mistakes?
Now, I saw some things out the other day, and I guess this was kind of tied up to where like the Bears' finances are into what is like the core of the roster right now. So this is kind of the group here for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of decent amount of money invested into these guys. So the anticipation has to be that the overall product is hopefully going to start to pick up.
Yeah, and I think there's the feeling all along was like, well, even if these guys aren't perfect, that you've brought in a coaching staff that should be able to squeeze more out of them. There was always a feeling under the previous regime and Matt Eberflus, now the Cowboys defensive coordinator, that they weren't necessarily maximizing the talent that was there. So it was always a little bit hard to tell, like, are these bad players or are they just not being utilized well? Because it never felt like guys were really being put in those positions to be successful. But now the feeling is like, Ben Johnson should be the coach that everybody on offense should be getting the most out of. You should be maximizing your receivers and your weapons, and even your offensive linemen, should be schemed up to have a better running game, better pass protection. And then defensively, we know Dennis Allen can be really creative in the front seven and how he's getting after quarterbacks, and he's kind of an aggressive guy on the back end. And you think the Bears have a lot of physical press man style cornerbacks. This should be a better scheme fit for them. And like so far, that hasn't paid off. And we get into this chicken and the egg thing of it's like, are the coaches underwhelming a little bit, or is it all the players, or is it a little bit of both? That's kind of the hard part to tell. And after only 2 games, it's too early to really have a final verdict. The jury's still out.
Now, you're bringing up, trying to get the pass rush to work, but in the same breath, you're talking about obviously missing your top 2 corners. Like, it's really a difficult spot to be in because, number 1, you're gonna get, quarterbacks basically just throwing up, basically, mini Hail Marys or whatsoever. But it's hard to believe as you're creating this pressure, that, when you're going with option 3, option 4 as option 1 and option 2, that you need the correlation. I'm very tight with the Cleveland Browns, and this was an issue they had on Sunday is, yeah, you can get after the passer, but if you don't always get home, now all of a sudden passing lanes are there, and you got, substandard players, not starters, trying to cover starters, the levee breaks.
Yeah, especially when, the first 3 weeks of the season, it was Justin Jefferson week 1, then Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams week 2, and now, CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens in week 3. Like, these are not just like easy matchups or even average matchups where maybe you can get by. It's like, no, so these are some of the best wide receivers in the NFL. But I think you're spot on there because on the one hand, you could say, well, if you're having trouble getting home, then you could blitz a little bit more. But then if you're blitzing, you're leaving a lot of guys one-on-one on the back end, and you can't trust them one-on-one. So then you want to leave more guys back in coverage, play some more zone, have 7 or 8 back there. But then if you can't get any pressure with 4, then the quarterback has all day, and your bad cornerbacks can't hold up all day with no pass rush to be able to cover those guys. So there's not really a clear, better answer because you kind of have you're kind of screwed either way. It's a lose-lose.
Yeah, now I wanna get a little bit back more to the offensive side of the ball here, and always one of the biggest issues teams have when they draft quarterbacks so high, either is they were an unstable regime. So, basically, they don't hold the weight they can as far as molding the guy. And certainly that was the case with the Bears now in year 2 of Caleb Williams with the new head coach. But one of the things I truly liked is when you come into this, and certainly Ben Johnson was the hire to make Caleb Williams work, you didn't just go run it back. You invested highly in Colston Loveland. You invested highly in Luther Burden. How is this working out? It seems Romo Dunzier and Caleb are certainly clicking. Obviously, we need to be able to factor in, some more colors on the paint palette here.
Yeah, I think this has been a point of contention this week for Bears fans because through the first 2 games of the season, Loveland and Burden haven't been very big factors in the offense. And this is where they point to the general manager and say, oh, well, why did you use a first round pick on a tight end when you had Cole Kmet and a second round pick on a wide receiver when you had DJ Moore and Roma Dunze, when you have offensive line questions and certainly pass rush questions and now kind of unexpected cornerback questions. But it's also been 2 weeks of their rookie season. You're not drafting these guys for what they do right away. You're drafting them in theory for the next 5 to 10 plus years, ideally, is what you're looking for there. So Loveland has definitely been a part of the offense. He's been playing, 60% of the snaps. They use a lot of 2 tight end sets, but these are guys who were drafted to be backups. And importantly, both were drafted and then missed all of OTAs and mandatory minicamps with injuries. So they didn't really practice in full until training camp. So they kind of got a late start to everything. And I think we're seeing that reflected in those guys having trouble getting up to speed. So instead, that's why somebody like Roma Dunze gets such a big part of it. And Caleb has quickly developed chemistry with Olamide Zaccheaus, their number 3 receiver, who came over he's been with the Falcons and the Commanders and a few other teams, has been kind of a go-to weapon for him early on.
I also think, and certainly there's other teams in this scenario, the way the schedule changed, has changed some where, you get a lot of teams who are playing divisional games so early. It stings a little bit more when you're 0-2 in the division, because at least you have that to kind of look on and say, oh, hey, yeah, maybe we are 0-2, only one of them was a division game. So I think that's something, that certainly probably gets fans ire up, certainly, a tad bit more. Dallas comes in this week and, you mentioned it obviously with the cornerback issues. The Bears need this one. And, I could honestly see this going similar to the Dallas Cowboy game of last week, where I think it's one of these ones where I don't know if either defense is really going to be able to unplug either team's offense from the outlet. But the Bears, 0-3 is not, catastrophic. They are in an extremely tough division. But I think the Bears would be hoping to find some way to start raising their heads a little bit higher about themselves.
Yeah, I think both of these teams are coming in from a similar position in terms of, yeah, like we're not sure if our defense can stop anybody, but we're pretty confident our offense is going to get rolling again against this opponent. And I think it scares me a little bit that we have seen the Cowboys offense work more consistently and fire on all cylinders last week, and we haven't quite seen the Bears fully put it together. So you kind of have to count on that. Oh yeah, against the bad Cowboys defense, the Bears offense should get going, but at least we've seen the Cowboys offense get going. And that's what has me concerned that like there's a little bit more of a proof of concept in the regular season for Dallas there. But I do think from an expectations perspective, like we all knew this wasn't going to be the year that the Bears are pushing for a Super Bowl and going on a big deep playoff run. Like this is build the foundation with Ben Johnson and really feel like you're primed for a big jump next year. So like I don't know, Bears fans are sweating like, oh no, are we going to miss the playoffs? It's more so like, is the blueprint altogether flawed, or are they going to be able to figure this out and give us confidence that no, this is the right coaching staff, this is the right quarterback, and maybe this is the right general manager to get us where they need to go. So I don't think that 0-3 is anything anybody will be tolerating, but it's not like the end of the world as long as it feels like they're making progress.
I definitely agree with that. It's one of those things where it's like, well, I need to at least see like the foundation has been poured. Okay. Something of that nature. I'm just going to close out with this. This would have been the week that the Chicago Bears got to face Micah Parsons. But instead, Jerry Jones was nice enough to basically gift wrap Micah Parsons, send him to Green Bay, and now you poor Bears fans have to deal with him twice a year.
Yeah, that's at the end of their schedule, and it's one of those things that like Bears fans are like, oh, we'll deal with that later. Like we don't got to think about it. We don't got to worry about it. Like I think the problem right now is like, hey, there's some real offensive line issues, and they got to get that figured out before Micah Parsons comes to town. Like that's sort of like this, like the Jaws shark that's swimming towards you, but you got time. Okay, it's like all right, we see he's coming, but we got like 2 months to figure this out. Like we got to band together and figure out who your left tackle is going to be at that point, and see if the interior guys can stack up a little bit better than they have so far. So it's one of those things where the Bears were already playing catch up to Green Bay, but this just makes it that much worse and gives them that much more to have to get ready for.
Yeah, I honestly think that, with this and with the Philadelphia Eagles being in the NFC, I think, we've talked so much for the last few years about the AFC, but, you really look now and you go Green Bay, Philadelphia on the top of that NFC conference, and you say, you want to know what? Those two probably match up and maybe match up extremely better against whatever two you want to determine are the top in the AFC. He is Lauren Cox, host of the Locked On Bears podcast, daily podcast on the Chicago Bears. Do not miss a minute of it. He brings you the best Bears content you can find. Jeff Lloyd, the BetCanada channel. We appreciate you. Hope you liked the video. Throw a like on it, throw some comments, and of course, subscribe to the channel.